Hey AP, I just wanted to kind of go over quickly what a thesis is and what I would expect from you this week in terms of writing a thesis. Now, normally in class we would be doing like a thesis writing activity to kind of practice, but I know you guys did them last year as well and I think you will nail it. I just wanted to go over to some extent like what you should and should not do. So when they say a thesis is a historically defensible claim, okay, that means that it has to be backed up with either a document that you're working with or outside information. Okay, you also want to just make sure that you are not like just rewording the prompt. A thesis is a whole new idea coming from you, and it's not really a vague idea either. So here's what I'm going to do to kind of explain this to you. I'm going to show you some samples here. So for the first one, this theme, and this is great because we've already kind of learned this, right? Evaluate the relative importance of different causes for the growth of Atlantic slave trade in the period from 1650 to 1750. Another thing, a sidebar, please take note of the years anytime they give you a prompt. As we go on in the curriculum, you're going to see more of these, and you want to make sure that you're aware of what time period they're actually asking for. So this is a very obscure time period. We didn't get to it quite yet. It's right after like Jamestown and that era, but it's also before the American Revolution. So it is the time where the slave trade actually grows. So I just wanted to use it as an example because it's something you can kind of wrap your head around. Okay, so let's look at the first examples. Okay, response to the prompt. This example here is not responding properly to the prompt. I want you to think to yourself, why? Okay, if you look at this is a very vague statement. Unfortunately, this was true in America. Slavery lasted for centuries. That kind of doesn't tell me anything, nor does it really answer why the different causes of the slave trade were important during this time period. Remember, constantly relook at that prompt. Yes, we all know slavery is bad and it lasted for centuries, but the question is really asking for the different causes of why it grew. So this is not responding to the prompts, just kind of going on about slavery. If you could see, it had many effects. I also, like, if you're saying something like many effects, you have to be ready to back that up. What were those many? Many is a very ambiguous, vague word. You want to be very specific when you're talking about this. So there were many effects, and the legacy of slavery caused damage to slaves. Although this is all true, no one's saying this is false information. It's definitely true. It's not responding at all to the importance of the different causes of slavery during that time period. So please be careful. Don't see like one word and run with it. Okay, problem 2. It's just restating the prompt. It's not really responding to it. So if you look at this one, it's saying that a number of causes, and we were undergoing significant change. I don't see what the causes are. Like, it does say it's evil. It does say that there are different causes and it's significant changes, but it's not really answering. I'm going to go to that prompt again so I can remind myself. It's not really answering the relative importance of the different causes for the growth of slavery. Okay, so we have to find, like, we want specific reasons why this institution grew. Yes, you can call it evil institution. Yes, you can say it lasted a long time, but you also need to answer that prompt. Okay, so you don't just want to restate that. You want to make sure you're answering it. So if you look at this, there is other issues that you can run into. When we say the word historically defensible, it is not just for my health. I don't just love history. That means that you must be able to back up your information. Now, for example, if I said slavery was really bad and evil, well, we have a whole museum to back that up, right? And we have a whole bunch of different primary sources to back that up, but I better be ready to show that evidence, is what I'm saying. So you want to make sure you always have the history and the sources to back up your evidence. Okay, so you can, of course, we're not saying that any of these things are not true, but we need the evidence to defend our claim. Okay, so the most important cause of the slave trade was the decline of Spain and Portugal's colonial settlements. There were many causes of the rise in the slave trade, but the most significant cause was the need for labor in textile mills in America's growing industrial cities and the invention of a railroad system to transport slaves to the interior of the United States. Well, I don't even know where to begin because that is very erroneous. It is grabbing things from many time periods. Textile mills will not be a thing until the latter 18th century. Railroads will not be a thing until the latter 19th century. Clearly, this person finished the class and they remember some things, and they tried to kind of fit it into this narrative about slavery. Not quite. We will see a time period where African Americans move up to work in factories, but it does not relate to this prompt. Okay, so please be careful and use your outside information in the instance of where you don't have documents. Okay, another thing that I actually see a lot is vague claims. Okay, it's just basically making a statement where you're being vague and you're just kind of trying to fill up the paper to get your teacher satisfied, but you're not really answering what the prompt is. And again, the prompt is all the way up there. So I'm going to look at it again, evaluate the relative importance of different causes for the growth of the slave trade from this time period. But I also want to make sure that that prompt is somewhere near me. So I'm constantly looking at it. Okay, the main cause of slavery came from the people at the top of society back then. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't want to say duh, but duh, right? Like we know wealthy people started this horrible, horrible institution, right? But that is a very vague statement. It's not good for a thesis. Okay, yes, of course it had an impact. That is what the prompt already said. This of course it's undeniable. The prompt said it. So you want to make sure that you're not just using big words and you're kind of like getting to the point with historic information. And now your line of reasoning. Okay? This is when you're kind of setting up in your thesis. Now, if you're taking notes on this, I would recommend that, but if you're setting up your thesis, you absolutely want to give yourself a line of reasoning. Get ready to write in your thesis and then further explain what you're writing about. So there were numerous causes for the rise of slavery. The increasing growth of colonialism impacted the era between these years, which grew and grew over this time period. I wouldn't even call that restating the prompt. I don't really see where you're kind of going to go with this essay. So when your thesis, you're like basically giving me everything that this essay is going to be about with your line of reasoning. Now here they gave one, but it's very vague. Slavery is relevant. And there's new laws and new changes by 1750. Well, the prompt only goes up to 1750, so that really doesn't unfortunately matter at this point in the essay, right? And also, like, what are they even talking about? New changes, and there was still slavery for another 100 years. So they're kind of prefacing this with very vague, ambiguous words, and they're not getting through a line of reasoning. Okay, so I just wanted to give you 3 examples of what you can't really do when you are working with a thesis statement. And I'm going to also further explain in the next screencast how you can write the thesis.